All right, guys. Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Let me see if I am actually live on this thing. Just give me 1 second to get set up here. All right. Let me just check all my channels. I think I'm on, but in case I'm not, I'll also be on Instagram here as well. Okay. So it looks like I'm on both the YouTube and the LinkedIn. So great. Um, So we're going to be doing an AMA today to talk about the summer 2023 investment banking recruiting process, which uh, I mean, for most of you who are in the class of 2024, if you're currently a sophomore and you haven't been living under a rock, then you're probably aware that that process has started, right? So, in fact, it's been going on for probably a couple months now. There are banks that had applications open as early as October, specifically RBC Capital Markets. But aside from that, like I would say, going back to January of this year was when we saw like the first major wave of applications open. Right now, at this point, as of today, um, we're seeing that like the vast majority of the bulge bracket, well, actually about half of the bulge bracket banks are open. The vast majority of the elite boutique banks have already opened. And then like I would say, a good chunk of the middle market banks have opened as well, right? So I'll just share my screen here. I mean, if you guys are on LinkedIn or if you're on my YouTube channel watching this live stream, you should be able to see my screen here. If you're on Instagram, I apologize, I can't screen share on Instagram, so you just have to kind of imagine what I'm looking at. But basically, what I pulled up here is this is like a summer 2023 recruiting thread inside of our clients only Facebook group, right? And what we have is um, a list of all the applications that are already open. Okay, so at least that we know of, which is should be most of them because we basically all of our clients kind of tell us when these applications open up if we don't already see it ourselves, right? And so like if we look at the elite boutique firms, you'll see that Centerview, they started opening up on Handshake at select schools. So if you go to the target schools, as of February 23rd, which is about a week ago. Okay, Evercore just opened up today. Your deadline is March 28th. Greenhill, they I think posted I think a week ago or less than a week ago. They don't have an actually specific deadline that was listed, if I'm not mistaken, but through networking, our clients found out that one of their analysts told them that the deadline is March 24th, so also before the end of the month. And then Guggenheim, it's been open for a while, like 4 weeks or so. Lazard has been open for a while. Their listed deadline is June 1st, but we have clients that have already started doing phone screens and phone interviews with them. So like they're definitely hiring on a rolling basis. And to be honest, like I'd be very surprised if they still have jobs available that late in the process. Like based on like the past couple of years, we see that most of these elite boutiques finish recruiting before the end of the school year. Okay. There's some exceptions to that, but like for the most part, like that's basically what's happening, right? Perella Weinberg, their deadline. I call all these listed deadlines. Okay, it's listed because um, typically like that's what they say on the application, but we know that most if not all of these firms hire on a rolling basis, and if they fill up their entire class before the deadline, then like that deadline is pointless, right? But Perella Weinberg's listed deadline is April 15th, so a month and a half from now. PJT Partners, March 22nd. Oh, sorry, March 27th. Catalyst, I think they had listed a deadline initially on a lot of schools for Handshake as February 1st. So if that's the case, then it's already passed. But I think they also just posted on some. Like we had a client that just told us he goes to semi-target school, and they just posted on his Handshake. So I don't know if that means that they've done their target school wave and now they're moving on to the semi-target schools, or what that means exactly. But typically historically with Catalyst, like you're gonna have to. This year is the first year they started posting on Handshake. Typically, you have to like network with them. In the past years, you have to network with them and get like a direct link that you can apply from someone at the firm. Okay, so like even if they're not on Handshake at your school, like you probably do something like that. So anyway, if we count that up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Rothschild as well. That's 9 out of the 10 elite boutiques, right? So like pretty much everyone's here. I think the only one that we're still missing or waiting on is Molus. Okay, so we haven't seen the Molus app yet. Um, then we go down to bulge bracket firms. Citi, they opened up on Handshake at select schools as of February 1st, which was so about a month ago. Credit Suisse, been listed for a while. Their deadline is listed as September 1st, but they say they're hiring on a rolling basis, right? Deutsche Bank's open. They typically open later in past years, but this year they pulled up. Goldman Sachs, in past years, they waited until July 1st to open applications. This year, they've told people that they're opening applications on April 1st. Okay, and they highly recommend that people apply before April 10th. Okay, so like they're starting their process 3 months earlier, right? JP Morgan, they typically start their application process on June 1st in the last 2 to 3 years. This year, they pulled it up to February 1st. So they've been open for about a month. And a lot of people have already done high reviews for JP Morgan. Morgan Stanley, supposedly opening in 2 weeks on March 15th. UBS, supposedly opening on April 11th, which is a little over a month from now. So that's like, most of the elite boutique and bulge bracket banks. And like there's a bunch of middle market banks, probably like 20 plus middle market banks. We're not going to go through every single one of them. There's obviously like some buy side firms, a lot of mega funds and things like that. Ares, Blackstone, Inside Partners, KKR, Point72 Academy, which is a hedge fund. They supposedly just opened today too, or they were going to open today. I gotta look out for the application. But you might be wondering, like, oh, how do I know about like some of these applications that haven't opened yet? Like, how do I know what date they are going to open? The reason why I know these things is because I work with a lot of students, and they're all out there networking with these banks, and through those conversations, a lot of times they get these types of intel, and they'll come back and share with me and share with the rest of the group, right? And so that's kind of like part of the network effect that we have here on Wall Street Mastermind, so you can like stay on top of things, make sure that you're never really missing a lot of these deadlines. Okay. So anyway, that's the context, right? Like the context is, a lot of these applications are already open or have been open. A select few firms have already even started doing phone screens and interviews. And based on the way things are trending, we expect that, especially if you're targeting elite boutiques and bulge bracket banks, which I think like the vast majority of the candidates always say those are the banks that they want to work for, right? So if that's you, what you need to know as a sophomore is that we expect this year, we expect things to happen or wrap up even earlier than the past couple of years. Okay? Well, I mean, we say that every single year, but like it's true. Like every year it happens a little bit earlier. Even the banks that used to hold out, like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, they like a few years ago, they deliberately pushed back their summer internship recruiting to sophomore summer as opposed to doing it in sophomore year. So like I said, again, June 1st and July 1st, right? Because their argument was like, yeah, this is crazy. We're like making it very unreasonable for the students. They were trying to do the right thing. And then, so they like delayed their recruiting timeline. But I think over the last 2 or 3 years, what they found is that like it didn't do anything, right? Because all of their competitors, all the other bulge bracket and boutique banks, they still just recruited earlier and earlier. They didn't care if Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan delayed it. Nobody followed suit. And so it's kind of like, why are we the only ones doing this? And meanwhile, like all of our competitors are just like picking off all of the best candidates that we could have had otherwise, because we're Goldman, we're JP Morgan, right? Like people want to work for us over most of the other banks out there, right? And so I think this year they just got sick and tired of it. I mean, this is purely my educated guess, because like I don't have like inside information at Goldman or JP Morgan or how they think, but like that's my educated guess on like what's happening there and why they decided to pull it up by 4 months and 3 months respectively this year. So that's unfortunate. I would say it's bad news for most of the candidates, because ideally you would like to have more time to prepare, but it kind of is what it is. You got to play the game the way the rules are set, and at a minimum, like everyone's on a level playing field. Right? You guys are all going to have less time together. So the key is going to come down to like, okay, if you have less time, like how do you be more efficient? How can you get more done in a lot less time, right? And so that's kind of like what I want to focus on talking about today. Like, if you guys have any questions about how to navigate through the summer 2023 recruiting process, or even if it's not for the summer 2023 recruiting process, because I'm sure some of you aren't currently sophomores, maybe you're freshmen or juniors or seniors or whatever, doesn't matter. Like, if you're still recruiting or you're thinking about recruiting in the future and you have questions that you want answers to, this is your time to ask those questions. We do this about, or I do this about once a month, just kind of like as a way to, because I can't really work with everyone inside of our program. Like we have a very limited amount of capacity, right? And we can't help everyone, right? But this is kind of like my way of, helping all the people that are not in this program. And also like in terms of like why you should listen to me or why you should care what I have to say, like who am I? I mean, I used to work at Morgan Stanley and Deutsche Bank, so I worked at two different bulge bracket banks. I've helped out with the recruiting process back when I was in banking and also in private equity. And more importantly, since then, over the last 4+ years, running Wall Street Mastermind, we've really built like the most successful program out there when it comes to investment banking recruiting, right? Like that's, I mean, I guess it's my opinion, but like based on everything I can see, I don't find any evidence to the contrary. Like we have an over 90% success rate. A lot of people don't believe us and say, oh no, like that's a lie. That's like too good to be true. It's not possible. Like, no, it's not a lie. It's not too good to be true. Like we only work with like in 4+ years, we've only worked with about 500 students, right? If you think about that, like probably every single year, there's over 100,000 applicants to investment banking, right? And so if on average we're working with a little over 100 applicants every single year out of 100,000 plus, like that's 0.1% or less than 0.1% of the applicant pool. So of course it's possible that we have over 90% success rate, because it's not like I'm saying I'm working with 50% of the people that are applying and we have over 90% success rate. That would not be possible based on how selective this industry is, right? But we only work with people that we're absolutely confident that we can get an offer for. In fact, like our policy is that we have an option for our program with the money back guarantee, and if we don't feel comfortable offering the money back guarantee, then we won't even work with you, because that means that we're not confident enough that we can get you the job, right? So like we are the only program in the industry that even has a money back guarantee option. That's how good we are at what we do, okay? Or that's how confident we are in our methodology, in our systems, in our processes, and like just navigating through the recruiting process and how you can get this job. Like it's honestly like once you've done it enough times, like it's not rocket science, right? And at this point, we've done it hundreds of times. So like we pretty much got this thing figured out. So anyway, I'm not here to like brag or talk about like, how great I am or whatever. Like that's not the point. Like the point is, I do know a thing or two about how to break into investment banking. And so like, if you guys have questions, like take advantage of this time. I'll be on here for about another 45 minutes or so. And so like ask as many questions as you guys can. And, I'll try to get through all the questions while we're on here. Okay. So let me kind of like dive into the first question I got. So we got someone on Facebook asking, hi Sam, thank you for talking about this. I was wondering where we could find this post or be added to the 2023 summer recruiting thread. Yeah, so it's a good question. So that thread that I just showed you, that's actually a thread inside of our clients only Facebook group. So like you can't access that thread at least unless you are already a client in our program. Okay, so I mean, I just showed it to you guys real quick because I want to give you guys a sense of like, hey, these are the applications that are already open, right? I mean, like, look, none of this is like, I mean, all of this is public information. Like anyone can go out there and find this, of course, but like, I mean, aside from maybe like some of the applications that haven't opened, like that's through our clients on networking and stuff. But if you just want to know which banks are open, like in theory, you could go like look every single one up and check their website and see if the applications are up, right? But like we just try to do as much heavy lifting as we can, especially for this kind of stuff where it's just basically just grunt work, right? And so like we've done that. We track it centrally for all of our clients. So if you want to join our program, though, happy to give you access to it. Like feel free to message me on Facebook or whatever, and we can talk about it. All right, and see if you qualify for the program. Because again, we can't work with everybody. Let me go over to Instagram real quick. So we got a question on Instagram. So Rahul V33 asks, any non-diversity IBD internships for freshmen to apply to? So Rahul's, so no, if you're talking about the bigger banks, like the bulge bracket, elite boutique, even some of like the middle market banks, like the top 50 banks out there that are like very reputable, everybody knows who they are. Typically, most of the time, those banks will not have freshman internships for non-diversity candidates. Okay, so to qualify for a diversity program, you either have to be female, you have to be African American, Hispanic, Native American. That also qualifies. They have some people. Some banks have programs for people with disabilities. Some people have programs for LGBTQ. Some people have programs for if you're a veteran. So if you've served in the army or stuff like that. Those are generally like the diversity programs that we see. We have also seen in rare instances um, some banks like do define like if you're like a first generation college student, for example, they kind of define that as diversity. So you just have to check with like every single bank like what their criteria is. But no, like for the most part, I mean I don't know. I think I can't tell, but I think from looking at your profile picture, you might be like an Indian male, I'm guessing, or something. I'm not sure. Sorry if that's wrong, but like so you might not qualify for a lot of these diversity programs, right? So if you're a freshman and you don't qualify for the diversity programs, then I think like the next best thing you can do for a freshman summer internship would be to do an investment banking internship, but just at a smaller investment bank. So these could be like kind of like at the regional level, right? Like these regional boutiques. There are a lot of these firms out there. Most of them don't have like structured internship programs in the summer, and so like you're not going to find these by just going on LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed or whatever the major job sites are, and like uh, hoping to find like a job posting or whatever. Like that's not how it really works. Okay, like for a lot of these smaller firms, like you're going to have to um, actually like network your way into these positions. Right. So that's what I would recommend you do if you're just a freshman. Of course, like if you can't get into investment banking, there are also a lot of other um, internships that I would consider to be relevant. Like you could work for a private equity firm, you could work for a hedge fund, you could work for family office, you could work for a search firm, you could work for equity research, valuation, corporate development. Like there's a lot of things you can do, especially as a freshman, for you to kind of like help beef up your resume with some relevant experience. Like it doesn't have to be purely investment banking. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I would say like if you're a freshman, like nowadays, like what we see is if you want to be like the most competitive candidate by the time you have to apply for your junior summer internship. So whether it's yeah, because like like the junior summer internship application, like I said, like it starts opening up sophomore year, right, about halfway through sophomore year. So like if you want to be competitive, typically the most competitive candidates that we see nowadays, by the time it's halfway through sophomore year, they usually have like at least two, if not three, relevant internship experience on their resume already. So like if you're a second semester freshman right now, let's say like you do an internship for the remainder of the semester, like each internship, I recommend that you do it for at least 2 to 3 months, right? But let's say you do that do one for the remainder of the semester, then you do one for freshman summer, and then you do one for like the first semester of sophomore year. Like that's 3 internships right there, right? But you're gonna have to like really pack it in and basically take every opportunity you have to do one of these internships if you want to get to that level. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Let me come over to this other question on Instagram by Steven. Steven says, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's up, dude? Um, how do you rate your experience in the industry as an Asian American? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Steven. Like, rate my experience. I mean, I had a great experience in banking. Um, I would actually say, like, at the junior level, there was actually a good amount of Asians, a good amount of Asian Americans, especially at the analyst level. And so, like, I I don't know. I don't really feel like it really impacted my experience that much. Like I don't feel like I was a minority or anything like that. Like that's why also um, like Asian students don't really qualify for these diversity programs because there are already so many of them in these programs, right? But obviously, like as you move up, as you move up the ladder or whatever, like yeah, I would say at the senior level, the more higher up you go, I think like the fewer Asians you see there. And I suppose like that's what they call the bamboo ceiling or whatever, right? But I don't know. I'm not here to get into that. Like overall, like I had a great experience, Asian or not. Like I don't think it really has anything to do with that. Like in banking, you get to learn a ton in a very short amount of time, and it's just a very great way to your set up the, like a strong foundation for your career, right? So that's what makes the job really, really attractive. Okay. Let me come over to LinkedIn. Um, so Wesley has a question. He says, I'm currently going, hey, what's up, Wesley? I'm currently doing the City Early ID program in the HR track and hopefully get the summer analyst after. Any tips to stand out from the other participants? Wesley, I'm not sure, like when you say in the HR track, what does that mean? Does that mean like you apply for, like if you get a summer analyst position, it would be for like an HR position and not on the investment banking side? Because like if you're trying to get into HR at City, like I don't know what HR looks for HR roles. Like I've never been an HR person, and my expertise is investment banking. So I don't want to sit up here and give you bad advice about what it takes to get into, yeah, you say human resources sector. So like that's not my forte, but I mean, if you're just saying like generally speaking, how do you stand out from the other participants at the event? Um, is by having good conversations with the bankers that you interact with, right? Part of it is like, you have these like usually at these events you'll have like opportunity to mingle with the bankers, and so do you have like a good networking conversation framework that you can follow? Do you know like what types of questions you should be asking them? Do you know also like are your behavioral answers very polished, right? Like if you know how to answer some of the common behavioral questions that are most likely going to come up in these networking chats, then that's going to help you stand out. Like I had a client that had a networking, like if you guys are on my email list, you might have seen this email recently, but I sent out like a message that my client sent me where he had a networking conversation with a banker, and then like the banker basically asked him like, okay, tell me about yourself, and also like why are you interested in investment banking? And he answered those two questions, and after that, the banker basically said like, dude, I've had so many of these calls, and that was the best answer I've ever heard, right? And like after that, like the rest of the conversation was really, really easy. And then like he also like at the end of the conversation, the banker also said like, okay, you should have just told him, it's like, yeah, like you're now on the top of our pile. Like your resume is on the top of our pile, basically. Like you're a high priority candidate. And he's like, now I want to sell Mizuho to you. Like the banker worked on Mizuho. It's like now I want to sell our firm to you. So it's like you're no longer trying to sell them on why they should hire you, and like the firm wants to sell you on why you should pick them over the other firms. Like that's the position you want to be in, right? So I would say like knowing how to have those conversations, having good answers prepared, that's huge. And then like also at some of these like uh, early ID or like other events, like pre-recruiting events, they'll sometimes like give you an opportunity to like work in a group, do a case together with a few other students, and then they'll actually have like bankers sit at each table and kind of just like observe each group, right? And like you probably already know this, but like for those of you who don't, or in case you didn't know, um, those bankers are observing you, like they are evaluating you and seeing how you interact with the other students that are in your group. Like, do you work well in teams? Are you like super domineering? Do you like let other people talk? Are you a team player? And like also like do you contribute? Right. So you need to strike a balance between like you don't want to be the person that's just like sitting there hiding in the corner and not saying anything and not adding any value. throughout the project or the conversation. But you also don't want to be the person that's just like me. It's all about me, and like my opinion is the right opinion, and my way is the right way, and everybody else is wrong. Like nobody wants to work with people like that, right? So just like be careful in terms of like how you're presenting yourself, right, and like how you carry yourself. Like be professional, be a team player, and just ask yourself like, am I acting like the type of person that people would want to work with, right? Because that's how you want them to feel about you. Okay, so anyway, that's like pretty like general high level advice, but hopefully that helps. Like it's not specific to HR, but again, I know nothing about HR. Okay. Um, Millen on LinkedIn asks, any tips on lateral moves from corporate banking to IB or PE, Canadian board back in New York office? Um, yeah, I mean, Millen, like with laterals, you have to be very opportunistic about it, right? Because typically, like a lateral position, I lateral from Deutsche Bank to Morgan Stanley, for example. I mean, that wasn't from corporate banking, but like it was from one bank to another bank. But like typically with lateral positions, um, it's very ad hoc, right? Like those positions only come up when there's a need inside of like whatever group that's hiring, right? And typically there would be a need if somebody quit early. That's one, right? And so they have to backfill the position. And two, if they just underhire, right? So like back during COVID, a lot of banks underhired because they kind of like tightened their belts and cut back on hiring because there's a lot of uncertainty in the markets. And then like it turns out like throughout COVID, like deal flow was actually crazy. Like the industry wasn't impacted the way that people expected. And so like people were just kind of like drowning at work, right? They were like, so that's so much to do and like not enough people to do it. And then so like these banks under hire and they realize like, okay, we got to bring on some more people because people were like starting to quit and stuff. It's like people were getting burnt out. And so that's like another reason why banks might hire laterals. And um, so the point is like, you can't always predict when that need is going to come up and also like at which bank. And also it's not even at which bank, but like lateral hiring isn't done at like the firm level, it's done at the group level, right? Like this one group at Goldman Sachs might have an opening, this other group might not, right? And so like a lot of times too, like even when there is a lateral position, like when I lateral to Morgan Stanley, um, like the job wasn't posted anywhere. Like I only knew about it because I had an acquaintance who was already an analyst at Morgan Stanley at the time, and so he told me about the role when it opened up. Like basically, the staffer went to the bullpen, asked all the analysts like, "Hey, we're hiring 2 lateral positions. Do you guys know anyone that would be a good fit?" And then he reached out to me and just asked like, "Hey," he knew I was a DB. He's like, "Hey, are you interested in coming over?" And I said yes. And then like from that point onwards, like from the time I said yes and I sent in my resume and I went through a phone screen with the staffer and I went in for a super day and I got the offer, like the entire process happened within the span of like a week or less. So like very quick process, like before people even knew about it, like it was over. The jobs were filled, right? And so like the reason why I'm telling you all this is like one, a lot of it comes down to like your network. So you have to network with a lot of people in a lot of different groups. Like if you're not even on their radar, like you might not even hear about these opportunities. Like some lateral jobs do get posted on like the career pages of these websites. So like especially nowadays, like there are a lot of lateral positions. I feel like right now, at least here in the U.S., I'm not sure about like Canada, but it's probably still the same. Like right now, I feel like it's pretty favorable market conditions for people who want a lateral. Okay, because I've been reading articles about like banks need so many people. They're even hiring people that have like no prior banking experience. They'll hire like lawyers and accountants and stuff like that, right? But like you need to be in the know, you need to be on the radar, you need to do a lot of networking. It's like again, not even networking just at the firm level. You can't say like, oh, I networked with someone at Goldman Sachs already, so like I'm set with Goldman Sachs. Like no, like each person is only going to know about the needs of their own groups, right? So you're gonna have to network with multiple groups or at least like all the groups that you're interested in. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And then like other than that, I was just like coming from corporate banking, which is like somewhat relevant, right? You have some relevant skill sets, but like the biggest elephant in the room anytime someone tries to lateral is always like, hey, can this person actually do the job? Because he doesn't actually have like investment banking experience. So you got to think about like how you can demonstrate throughout the networking and the interviewing process that you actually know what you're doing. and that you're going to be able to actually like come in and hit the ground running. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me go to the next question here on YouTube. So Lawrence asks, yo, what's up, Lawrence? Should you submit applications as early as possible or aim to network before you submit? Yeah. So Lawrence, like this question is like kind of nuanced, right? Like there's no like just one black or white answer. It was case by case. I would say generally speaking, you want to apply sooner rather than later because a lot of these firms do hire on a rolling basis, like I said. So like if you wait too long to apply, then like the later you apply, the lower your chances are, right? Because like the fewer spots there will be, right? And so in general, you want to like apply as early as possible. Ideally, you would have already done your networking before you applied, and there's a lot of benefits to that because one, like if you network well and you have someone on the inside who's like referring you, obviously like that can help you. That can help you get an interview, right, a lot more easily. But secondly, like sometimes, depending on the firm, like some firms like make you write a cover letter, or like a lot of these elite boutiques, like they make you like answer questions like in a written format, right? Like, oh, why do you want to work for Perella Weinberg or whatever, right? And so like if you have to like answer one of those questions, like it'd be a lot easier to answer why you want to work for this firm if you've actually spoken to people that work at that firm. So you can like actually have something to say about why that firm is interesting or why that firm is unique, right? And so like if you have a network, like a lot of times like that can be a bit more difficult in terms of like coming up with like just really unique answers that are specific to that firm, right? So that's some of the benefits. But I would say like if the applications are already open and you haven't networked yet and they're hiring on a rolling basis, depending on how long the application has been open. If it's like just open, you might still have some time to like network a little bit before you apply. But like if application has been open for a while, then I was like, you should just apply first, because also like most of the time, what these banks are doing is they're not like rejecting people until like the very, very end of the process. So like this entire recruiting process could take them like months, right? But usually like you're not going to hear, like if you don't get selected for an interview, or even if you interviewed and then like you're not given the offer, a lot of times like it just turns into like a waiting game where you're just like waiting to hear back and you never do until like the very, very end. Then they'll send out like one massive rejection email to like all the people that didn't make it, right? But my point is like, because they won't reject people until like the very end of the process, then even if you apply first, if you don't get selected right away, and then you followed up with networking after that, and then someone really likes you and then they want to like pull you into the process, they can always do that, right? Like, because you haven't been officially rejected yet, right? And I think that like also because if you apply first, like if you apply earlier, on the off chance that your resume does get selected even without a referral, like it is very difficult, but it is possible, right? So like on the off chance that it does happen, then that's great, right? So you never know what could happen, right? So that's why I would say like all else equal, I would recommend that people apply earlier rather than later, and like do a fast follow with the networking. Okay. The reason why I said this is a nuance also, as if this answer wasn't nuanced enough already. The other part is like, it depends on like what's on your resume, right? How good is your resume right now? If your resume is like really, really good, then you have a higher chance of being selected for an interview, even if you don't already have a referral. I guess I would say like chances are still relatively low just because of the number of applicants they have. But like it is possible, right? But it's a lot more possible if like sometimes we see these candidates like they go to like a really good target school like Harvard or Wharton or whatever, and they have like a 4.0 GPA, and they've got like 3 investment banking internships on their resume, and then they're like leadership position in clubs at school, like investment fund and investment banking club and like whatever. Like their resume is freaking stacked, right? And so like for people like that, where like they check all the boxes, like hey, like maybe like you might get selected, right? Like, but like on the opposite spectrum of that, like if your resume is, like non-target school, like mediocre GPA or below average GPA, and you don't have any relevant experience on there, like your most recent job was, I don't know, working as a barista at Starbucks, like nothing against baristas, but I'm just like, you see an example, like something totally irrelevant to investment banking, like there's almost no point for you to submit your application now. Like then I would say like you need to first work on like work as hard as you can, as fast as you can, to get some form of relevant experience onto your resume as quickly as possible, so that you can apply before before the deadline comes up, right? And also, like if you're in that situation, like you're that last minute, then you can get the internship first, as long as you secure the offer. Like you don't have to like finish your internship before you put it onto your resume. Like even if you just got the internship and you haven't started yet, like you can add it onto your resume and say like you will be starting there in the future, right? So at least you're like getting credit for it, right? I mean, you're not getting full credit for it because you haven't actually done it yet, but then like it's better than no credit. Like at least they know you will be doing it, right? And obviously, as you do the internship and you actually start working on projects, then you can start like layering on more bullet points onto your resume. Like it's a living document, you're going to constantly update it, so you always have the latest and greatest in whatever applications you have to submit at any given time. You're putting your best foot forward, right? So anyway, hopefully that helps. I know that was like pretty long answer, but like again, it's kind of a nuanced question. So let me go to the next question. Actually, before that, let me drink some water. So Saloni on LinkedIn says, how do you make your resume stand out? I have 2 co-ops working as a financial analyst, but I always get rejections from the big companies when I apply through their website. Yeah, Saloni. So I don't know. I would have to see like your actual resume to know for sure like what the issue is. But if I had to guess, I mean, like with most resumes, like there's 2 main issues that typically have. One is people don't have the relevant experience, right? So like you can make your resume look as good as possible, but like if you don't have any relevant experience that you're writing about, then it's all just fluff, right? It's all like hot air and like nobody cares, right? Doesn't really sound like that's the case for you because you said you've done 2 co-ops working as a financial analyst. So if that's the case though, then the other possibility is that you're just not packaging it. You're not packaging your experience together in like the right way. You're not presenting it in the right way. You're not like presenting it in a way that's like attractive to bankers, or like a lot of that comes down to like formatting and like the first impression that your resume gives bankers. Because like you guys have to realize like a lot of the bankers who end up having to screen these resumes and decide like who gets interviews and who doesn't, like they're having to go through like hundreds of resumes at a time. So like they don't spend very much time reviewing any single resume. Like usually it's like 10 to 15 seconds, skimming for certain things real quick, and then like they're moving on to the next one. Right. And it's a snap second decision, like yes, no, yes, no, 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 yes, no, 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 no. Like there's gonna be a lot more no's than yeses, right? And so like if you give them any reason to ding your resume, like if they don't like the way something looks, or you have like a silly mistake somewhere, formatting error, or spelling error, or grammatical error, or like the way you write your bullet points is not specific enough, it's too vague, like you want to make sure that you're describing both like the action that you took as well as like the results that you achieved, and ideally you also want to be able to quantify those results as much as possible. Like there's a lot of things that go into like writing a perfect resume that I just think that like most people just don't think about, right? And so unfortunately, like they don't teach this stuff in school. And like even when you go to career center or career services, like a lot of times like the revisions that they give, like that I've seen anyway, like haven't been the best, right? And so like like you want to make sure that you're formatting your resume the right way, and you're like presenting all the experiences that you've had to date in the best light possible. If you want some help with that, like what you can do is that you can go to our website. It's www.wallstreetmatchman.com. Street's abbreviated to ST. It's wallstmatchman.com/apply. Or sorry, not apply. You don't need to apply. Apply is like if you want to book a call to speak with us. But just go to wallstreetmatchman.com. And then like at the top, there's a drop-down menu in the toolbar. And you can actually, there's a free course. So you can actually like download a free course, and inside of that free course, there's a training on like how to put together your resume, and we also have like our template in there, which has already been formatted for you, and so you can just use that. And you don't have to worry about like, am I formatting this right way or whatever, right? So that's like half the battle right there, right? So hopefully that helps. And then like the last thing I will say too also is like, you see you always get rejection from the big companies when you apply to their website. Um, I don't know who these big companies are, but I will tell you, like, if you're applying to a lot of these big companies because they're so big and they get so many applicants, if all you're doing is like submitting your resume, sometimes like even if your resume is good, you're still not going to get selected. Just like that's, especially in investment banking, like that's almost always the case. That's why, like going back to what I said earlier, like you have to network, you have to like get someone there to like actually know who you are and like be willing to, go to bat for you and help you get the interview, right? So if you're not doing that, all you're doing is like submitting a bunch of resumes everywhere, taking like this spray and pray approach, like that's really not going to work well. Okay. So hopefully that helps, Saloni. Let me go to the next question. Hidana, oh, Hida Naruto GTA. Got it. Cool. I used to read a lot of Naruto too, so big Naruto fan here. Um, let's see here. If all you have on your resume is a deal advisory internship plus a 3.6 GPA, would you say you have a good chance for some IB internship? All I have before deal advisory is retail banking. Um, yeah, I mean, look, this is again, it's more nuanced, right? There's a lot of other factors here, and it's hard to say without like seeing your actual resume. But um, if you want to email me your resume, like I'm happy to take a look at it and give you more specific feedback. You can just message me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever your platform of choice is, or you can email me. If you want to email me, Sam at wallstmastermind.com. Okay. But like, yeah, like other things that matter, like what school do you go to? Is it target school, semi-target school, non-target school? Um, aside from like work experience, like um, what other like extracurricular activities or leadership activities do you have on your resume, right? Um, how well is it formatted, right? What kind of responsibilities have you had at this deal advisory internship? Like, was it like a lot of really legitimate things that you worked on, or was it like kind of one of those BS internships where you didn't get a lot of responsibilities, right? Have you networked with the people at these firms that you're planning on applying to? Like, so there's just a lot that goes into it. I mean, I think like deal advisory internship, like that sounds like it's relevant, so that's good. 3.6 GPA, I would say like that's. I mean, it's okay. Like I would say like 3.7 or above. I was talking about like 3.7 or above is like no questions asked, right? That's like pretty good GPA. You're not gonna be grilled about why your GPA is not higher. Like 3.6, 3.5, like at that level, it's probably like it's not gonna be the reason why you get the job, but it's also not gonna be the reason why you don't get the job, right? It's just kind of neutral, I would say. And like below 3.5, if you're in like the lower half of the threes, like now like that's going to be kind of like a bit of a handicap, and you're gonna like if you get the job, you're getting the job despite your GPA, not because of your GPA. So like you're gonna have to like overcome it by being stronger in other areas. Okay, so but yeah, deal advisory, retail banking. I mean, retail banking is like not super relevant, right? So I mean that's kind of like all I can tell you based on the information that I have here. Again, without looking at your actual resume, like it's kind of hard to say. But also, like the other thing, I actually like probably the biggest thing that I missed talking about is like, um, what year are you in school? Like, what's your graduation date? I mean, this is one of the things that like people don't think about nearly enough. Like everyone's like, oh, I got to learn technical interviews, or I got to prep for technical interviews, or I got to network, or I got to do all these things. Like everyone knows that stuff, but a lot of people don't like think about like the timeline, right? Like the sooner you start or the earlier you are in the timeline, the more likely it is for you to get an offer because more time you have to go out and do the necessary prep and check all the boxes you need to check and become that competitive candidate, right? But like the later you are, like if you're a junior or even a senior, like it's gonna be a lot harder than if you're like a freshman or a sophomore, right? So that's why I always encourage everybody to start early, right? So anyway, hopefully that helps. Let me go to the next question. So Nita on LinkedIn asks, any tips on lateral moves from VC, growth equity, PE to IB for full-time roles? Beyond access to more optionality through banking, what are some things that people reference when making a switch? Um, Interesting. So you are currently on the buy side. Um, so you're currently on the buy side, but you want to move into IB because that's like, I would say like that's a pretty rare thing that we don't see very often. Most people do IB for a couple of years so that they can move over to the buy side. Right? It sounds like you're kind of already on the buy side and you want to move over into investment banking. Um, so that's interesting. But I would say, look, if you're currently already working on the buy side and you are an investor, and then you want to move over to IB, um, one thing off the top of my head that I could think of is that you could say something like, hey, on the buy side, because you're an investor, you're working really, really closely, like a lot more closely and at a much deeper level with like your portfolio companies or the companies that you invest in, right? So that's like one characteristic of buy side roles. Whereas like in investment banking, you get to touch a lot more companies. Like you get to, because you're not investing in these companies, you're advising them, right? You're just an advisor, and you can even advise on like multiple deals at the same time, right? So like if that's what you're going to do, or like if that's what you're doing in banking, like it's not like one is better than the other, but that's purely a personal preference thing, right? So you could argue like at this stage of my career, like I don't know how old you are. I assume you're like pretty young and kind of just starting out, right? But you could say like, yeah, at this stage of my career, um, I actually prefer to have like kind of like broader exposure to I prefer to have broader exposure to the markets, not to the markets. So like, I prefer to have like broader and more well-rounded exposure to a lot of different types of businesses and industries and business models, right? Because like there's a lot that I don't know yet, and so like getting that type of exposure and seeing a lot of different businesses and how they work, some of the best companies in the world, like that's gonna allow me to learn more and develop like a more well-rounded and diverse skill set, something along those lines, right? So this question, like, do you want to go broad or do you want to go deep, right? And again, like it's not like one is better than the other. So you're not like bashing buy side or whatever. Um, you still had a great experience on the buy side, and a lot of things that you liked about the buy side role is also things that you'll be able to do in investment banking. Like you're still able to analyze companies, you're still able to uh, work with numbers, build models, so on and so forth, value businesses, and so like you can also touch on like all the similarities between the two, and like those are still things that you like. But there's this one thing that banking has that the buy side doesn't offer, and that's the reason why you want to make the move, right? So it usually would be something like that. Like that would be the framework for answering like why this and not that. Does that make sense? So you want to like touch on the commonalities and then like also like highlight like the primary difference that's like causing you to make the move, but like don't negatively bash anything. You don't want to be negative. You don't want to have like a bad energy. Like no one wants to like work with or hire a negative person, basically. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense, Nita. Next person says, is it wise for a junior to re-recruit and delay graduation? Um, yeah, I mean, look, again, I feel like I keep saying this, but these answers are always nuanced on a case-by-case basis. I don't know who you are. I haven't seen your background. So like, I don't want to like guide you down the wrong path by telling you something that, maybe doesn't apply to you. But I would say that it depends on the situation. It depends on the junior. Like if you delay graduation so that you can recruit again for banking, like why weren't you able to get into banking the first time, right? If it's like, I couldn't get into banking the first time because like I realized I found out about banking too late. And then like by the time I was ready, like all the firms were done recruiting already. But now at this point in the process, based on where I'm at, like I've come a long way. And if I could just like extend the runway by like another year, then I would be able to get into banking. I'm very confident I'd be able to get into banking. Then like that's one thing. Like that's like, okay, yeah, it might be a good idea, right? But let's say like in a different scenario, it's like, oh, the last time I didn't get into banking because um, like my GPA is a 2.8. And so like nobody will hire me. Well, like just by delaying graduation, that's not really going to change anything, right? Um, so like you're going to have to like really be honest with yourself and ask yourself like, why couldn't I get in last time, and like what's going to be different if I do delay graduation and re-recruit this time? Because like delaying graduation, there's a cost associated with it, right? Like it could be totally worth it, but like the cost is, you're gonna have to pay more tuition, and like obviously you have to stay in school a bit longer. Right? I mean, I think like staying in school a bit longer is not a huge deal, but like paying more tuition for a semester, like depending on the school you go to, like could be pretty expensive, right? Obviously, like in the long run, if you end up getting to banking because of that, that's well worth it because like your starting salary is going to be like anywhere from 150 to $200,000 plus right off the bat, and like that's like the minimum that you're going to make for the rest of your career. Like that's worth a lot, right? But yeah, like you gotta, I guess, like long story short, like you gotta be very honest with yourself and diagnose like what is the reason why you didn't get in this time, and is that going to be fixable if you like delay graduation and had a second chance at it, right? We've had a lot of our clients that did that exact thing, which is like they delayed graduation, and then that allowed them to recruit a second time, and then like they either got like a much better offer than they got the first time, or like sometimes it's like they didn't even get an offer the first time and they got an offer the second time. Like either way, it's like it's a great outcome, right? Maybe you like weren't good at technicals last time, but you feel like now you are, or maybe like whatever issues you identified, then like one, identify the issue, and two, like have a like really good game plan for how you're going to overcome that. Maybe you need to get help. Maybe you need someone to coach you on it. Maybe like you're stuck on like the level that you're at and you don't know how to get better, right? And so you need someone else to tell you how to do it. Like whatever it may be, right? Like that's like I would only basically like I think it's a viable option, but I would only do it if you're actually gonna like if buying it more times is actually gonna make a difference for you. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I kind of lost my Instagram live, so I'm trying to see if I can like get back on there. Let me try real quick. Give me 1 second. Sorry. My internet's pretty spotty. Okay. All right. Let me come back. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Instagram's not working. So sorry to my Instagram folks. Hopefully you guys know I'm also on LinkedIn, on YouTube, so you guys can go there if you want to continue watching. The next question from Minicius is, do applicants get different technical interviews if the recruiter knows they aren't finance majors? I mean, I think like different applicants will oftentimes get different interview questions, period, right? Because like not every interview is going to be the same. You might not even have the same interviewers. And also like a lot of interviewers, what they like to do is they will just kind of like go with the flow and see how you're answering questions during the interview. Like some interviewers, like what they'll do is like, they'll ask you a question, they'll start with like the easier stuff. And if you get the easier stuff right, then they'll move to like something slightly harder, and just like keep ratcheting up the degree of difficulty until they see like, how far can they push you before you mess up, right? So like that could be like one thing that happens, in which case it's kind of like, obviously everyone's gonna, it's like choose your own adventure. Everyone's gonna go down a different path, right? But like, I think like if I try to put myself in your shoes and like understand like why you're asking this question, my assumption is that you might not be a finance major, and so you're hoping that I'm going to tell you that, oh, because you're not a finance major, then your interview is going to be easier. Like I don't really know that. I wouldn't really say that, to be honest, like, because we've had a lot of students that are not finance majors, like bioengineer majors, like literature majors, history majors, philosophy majors, like whatever. And like when they go to the technical interviews, like they're still expected by the interviewers to know all the technicals. Like in this day and age, like first of all, the banks don't care what you study in school. They don't care what major you are. Like no one's saying like, oh, we'll only hire finance majors and no one else, right? You look at the last two CEOs of Goldman Sachs, like Lloyd Blankfein and Hank Paulson, not David Solomon, not the current one, but the last two. One of them was an English major, one of them was a literature major, right? So that just goes to show you, like, the most powerful men on Wall Street weren't finance majors. Like, you don't need to be a finance major to become an investment banker, right? But the expectation nowadays is that, like, anyone that's recruiting for investment banking, if you're actually a serious candidate, you would have already done the homework on your own to learn what you need to learn to be able to pass these interviews. Like, that's the expectation now. So even if you're not a finance major, like, you're still gonna have to do it. Right? Like a lot of people, even if they are finance majors, like they're not learning a lot of the stuff that they would need for interviews until like, upper level courses anyway. And then like the recruiting's happening so early during like sophomore year, like no one's even taking those courses. So even the people that are finance majors, like it's not like um, they have all this knowledge that they learn in school that you don't have, right? Like that's just not the case. So unfortunately, I don't know, like that might not have been what you wanted to hear, but I'm just here to give it to you straight and tell you the truth. And if you are serious about investment banking, you have to figure out a way to either like learn all the technicals on your own, or if you don't feel like you can do that, then it's time for you to like reach out for help and like have someone like us teach you all the technicals you need to know, or it doesn't have to be us, it could be anyone else that you think would be willing to help you. Okay. Let's see. I got a few more minutes. Let me get these last couple questions here. So Prisha asks, do you have any advice for incoming college freshmen? Like, can I do something to get a head start that might give me an advantage later on? Yeah, I mean, Prisha, I would say if you're incoming college freshman, like typically for people that are still in high school, I tell them like the thing that moves the needle the most is like, what school do you go to? So like, if it hasn't been decided what school you're going to get into yet, then the best thing you can do is probably, do all the things you need to do to get into the best target school possible, right? So that's like, getting better SAT scores, like having better grades, working on your college apps, making sure your essays are great, so on and so forth, right? It sounds like for you, you're about to graduate senior year, so you already know where you're going. So at this stage of the process, I would say like, I would start doing some research for like whatever school you're going to be going to. Do some research on kind of like what the on-campus club landscape looks like at your school. Like, what are the organizations that you could possibly join when you get there? Which one of these are like relevant to investment banking, right? What are the difference between all the clubs? Because like a lot of times, like on these campuses, there will be multiple finance clubs or multiple student investment funds, and like from the outside looking in, it's hard to tell like which one's better, which one's worse. Like, why are they better? And like that stuff like that you can probably figure out later on when you get on campus, or like after you've been on there a while. Then like you hear about different organizations' reputations and stuff. But like the sooner you can find out about that kind of stuff, through like networking or talking to like older students, maybe like friends or family friends that already go to that school, like whatever, right? There are ways to figure this stuff out. Then like you can start being more targeted with like, okay, like my goal is like I want to get in this club, and like I gotta tell you, like the best clubs on these campuses, a lot of times like they'll have like really amazing placement rates into the top investment banks, right? Because it's kind of like a virtuous cycle where like if you get into the best clubs, they're already only taking the best students, and then like the best students usually end up getting like the best jobs, and those students end up becoming alumni who work at these banks, and when they want to help the younger students below them, like they'll typically give first preference to like students that are in the same clubs that they used to be in, right? And so like a lot of these clubs, like you're joining it for like the alumni network, right? But like also like the ironic thing is like a lot of these clubs, like they're not necessarily like the best because they're just like better at preparing or whatever. It's like they're already taking the best students. They already have the best reputation, so they get to hire all the best students. or not hire, like they get to recruit all the best students. Because they recruit all the best students, like they're getting the best jobs, and like it just kind of, that's why I said it's a virtuous cycle, right? So, but like if you're not already like the most competitive candidate, you might not even be able to get into those clubs, right? So one is like figuring out who are the clubs you want to target. Two, like what do they look for, and what's their recruiting process like, and like what is it going to take for you to get in, right? Every school is different, every club's different, and then like to be honest, a lot of these clubs, their recruiting processes are just like kind of modeled after like the investment banking recruiting process. So like you don't have to network with them, you don't have to do coffee chats with the members in the clubs. You have to like be able to pass interviews, both behavioral and technical interviews. You have to like make your resume look good. Like it's all the same skills, right? So like you're gonna have to learn how to do all these things. Just like you're gonna have to learn much earlier. Obviously, like the degree of difficulty is not as high for getting into these clubs than to like get into investment banking, but it's like it's kind of like baby steps. So you have to learn how to walk before you can run, right? So like actually, like a lot of the like younger students, if they start working with us early enough, um, like a lot of stuff that we're teaching them to prepare them for investment banking recruiting, it actually ends up helping them get into those clubs too. So like I had a client, he goes to NYU and he joined us basically like right around the same time, like at towards the end of senior year of high school, maybe like the summer right after senior year before he went to college. And it's like we started like helping him with stuff, and then like he got on campus, and then like he ended up going for one of the clubs on campus, which is called Finance Society. So Finance Society is like supposedly, as far as I know, or this is what he told me, it's like the most exclusive feeder club on campus. I mean, like everyone can join as like a general member, but a lot of times like being a general member doesn't really mean anything. Like for a lot of these clubs, there's like a more exclusive cohort that you can like you have to apply and be recruited into. So like Finance Society, I think they have like over 200 applicants every year, and they take like 7 or 8 people, right? So like the acceptance rate is like I don't know 3 to 4%, which is like almost like a top investment bank. It's almost as selective, but like every single one of the students that get into that very selected cohort, they all end up going to like really really good banks. But like I mean, they were already the cream of the crop in the first place, right? But anyway, like so we helped the student like get into finance society, which is like this is great, right? Like so like he's set, and like sure enough, like now he's done recruiting. Like he ended up getting into an elite boutique. He's going to Green Hill, which is a great bank. So anyway, for someone like you, like that's what I would focus on at this stage of the process, okay? Because you're not really going to be able to find like super relevant internships or whatever. Like they don't have that for high schoolers, okay? All right, let me just answer the last 2 or 3 questions, and I do have to run. So we're already over by a few minutes. But Andrew on LinkedIn asks, how do you get more responses from cold email / LinkedIn messages? This is a loaded question, but Andrew, like I think there's a couple things. Like one is like how you write the email. Like your email has to be professional. The email has to be concise and straight to the point, and like it has to include like all the right elements. Like so, I mean, like we have a lot of templates inside of our program that we share with students, and like then like they can customize it to like their own needs. But so one is like how you write your message, including like the subject line and like everything, right? The other part though, like that a lot of times like people don't think about or they kind of neglect is that when you send out these cold emails and LinkedIn messages, a lot of times like, before people respond, what they're doing is like they're gonna look you up first. Like if you're reaching out on LinkedIn, like they're gonna look you up. They're gonna look at your profile and see like who is this person, like what kind of background do you have? Does he look qualified? Whatever, right? Do I like the way he looks? Like, do you have a good picture? Like even that matters, right? Or like if you email me, like I might like if you have your resume, I might look at your resume. If you don't have your resume, I might still go look you up on LinkedIn. And the reason why they do that is like bankers are very busy, so like they get a lot of these like networking requests, and they don't have time to talk to every single person. They're already working like 80, 90, 100 hours a week. So like if they look you up and they don't like what they see, or if they feel like, this person's not qualified, like even if I speak to him, like there's nothing I can do to help him. Like this guy's not getting in. Then like it's nothing personal, but like they're just not going to, they're just not going to want to like waste your time talking to you, right? So they're just not going to respond. And so like a big part of it is like, have you already done what you need to do to like make yourself a more appealing candidate on paper? Because if you do that, then like I promise you, like that alone will like increase your response rate significantly, right? But like people don't think about it. People think about like resumes as like a separate thing as networking, like behavioral interviews as a separate thing as networking. Like no, like all these things are related. They have like dependencies on each other, right? I already talked about why like behavioral interviews are important for networking earlier, but like that's how you stand out. That's how you impress the banker, right? Same thing with resumes. Like before they even respond to you, like that's how you stand out. That's how you impress the banker. That's how you like pique their interest and like wanting to talk to you, right? So those would be like I would say like those are like the two biggest things. Okay. Um, Vinicius says, I've secured an offer for summer 2022 at Bank of America, and in the contract, there is a conditional offer for summer 2023. Junior summer, is it worth it to apply early for other companies for summer positions in 2023? Before even knowing the offer for my junior year for 2023, there might be the case I will have to reply to the offer before my summer internship now in 2022. Yeah, I mean, Vinicius, so this is a very personal decision, right? Like, I mean, Bank of America is a great bank. Like some people will be like, I'd be very happy at Bank of America, in which case like there's no need to recruit anymore, right? But like some people are like, okay, Bank of America is good. It's like maybe like a top 10 bank, but like I want to be in a top 5 bank, or I want to be in a top 3 bank, right? And like so that's like a very personal choice. Like you could, selectively recruit for like the banks that you think you would rather take over Bank of America and just see what happens. And if you don't get it, then like go back to Bank of America. And if you do get it, then like it doesn't matter if it's an exploding offer and you have to decide before you get the offer from Bank of America, right? It's not like you're recruiting for banks that are worse than Bank of America and then like having to decide on an exploding offer. Like at this point, if you have a summer 2022 offer, which sounds like a sophomore summer offer, and that has the opportunity to convert into a junior summer internship offer for summer 2023, then like all you need to do is do a good job during your sophomore summer internship, and most likely that will convert into a junior summer internship offer. So it's almost like Bank of America for junior summer is like already like the baseline for you. Like you can only improve from there, and hopefully like, you don't do any worse, right? So like if I were you, like I wouldn't even bother recruiting with banks that are worse than Bank of America for summer 2022 because like there's almost no point. Okay, so anyway, hopefully that makes sense. We are a little bit over time. I do need to go help take care of my daughter, help my wife out. And so I'm going to wrap it up here, but hopefully this is helpful to you guys. For those of you that are, interested in learning more, or you want more help, or you want to have like a longer, more extended conversation, you guys are welcome to book a free call with our team. You can go do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And what'll happen is like, you'll first get on what we call like a virtual coffee chat with one of our alumni who's gone through the program, upperclassmen, already gotten into the top bank. They just went through the recruiting process. They're very happy to answer whatever questions you have about the recruiting process, give you recruiting advice. We can answer your questions about, our program and how it works. We can ask them about their own experience if you want, like whatever you want, like it's your time, right? So it's a quick like 30-minute call, 30 minutes or less. You get what you need. And then after that, like if everything sounds great and like you want to explore this further, you want to talk to us more, you want to like apply to work with us for our program or whatever, then like our alumni can like set you up with our director of enrollment or with myself, and then we can have a further conversation to see if you're actually a good fit. Because again, like we can't work with everybody. Like I mean, obviously, like we get phenomenal results for our clients, and a lot of people want to work with us, but like we're still a pretty lean and small operation. So like I said, we don't work with that many students. Like about 500 over 4 years. That's not a lot at all, right? 0.1% of the applicant pool every year gets to work with us. So if you want that opportunity and you want to work with a program that's had over 90% success rate, you want to work with a program that's placed people in every single bulge back elite boutique bank out there, you want to work with the only program that has an option for a money back guarantee out there, then reach out to us. Happy to talk to you, see if it's a good fit. And even if it's not a good fit, like we'll tell you it's not a good fit. And also like we will just at a minimum give you some advice on what you should do for your recruiting process, even if you're not working with us. Okay, so like either way, you got nothing to lose, and we look forward to hopefully talking to you guys. All right. Otherwise, if we don't talk to you, best of luck to all of you with recruiting, whether you're recruiting for summer 2023 or something else. If there's anything we can ever help you with, feel free to reach out to me. Best way to reach me is probably on LinkedIn. You can just search up my profile, message me, and be happy to help you out. All right. That'll be it for today. We do these about once a month, so I'll be back again at the beginning of next month, beginning of April. Until then, best of luck, everyone, and we'll talk to you guys next time. All right.